Welcome to Get Your Bell Rung Pro Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, KG Landry. Tonight, part 2 of my interview with Gator Magraw, Mike Kinney. We're talking about the sacrifices, the doubts, the moments of struggle, and the mindset it takes to rebuild your identity after a dream changes. This is a conversation about chasing purpose, overcoming fear, and finding confidence when life does not go according to plan all the time. Mike has been traveling around talking about these things, so I am so fortunate to have him on this podcast. Guys, Mike Kinney, how are you, my friend?
Hey, it's great to be back. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. So a couple of things has happened since you were on the podcast last I seen. Although you retired from in-ring action, and correct me if I got anything wrong, so I just read about this. You may not be in the ring, but you are now kind of the face, the general manager of a wrestling promotion.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's my journey back to the wrestling ring in 2025 opened up a lot of pantries with people hiding in them. And what happened was it just really inspired a lot of people from my past to take another run at this wrestling business. It spawned me running a show last year. I've got another show that I'm personally running here in June.
Wow.
But yeah, there's a wrestling school that opened up in Iowa. A friend of mine who was inspired by my comeback and wanted to get back in the wrestling business. The show you're specifically talking about is someone who I had helped break into the business back in 2000. And I was running some shows back then, and they took everything that I taught them back to California, where they were from, and started running some promotions out there. They've since relocated, wanted to step back into the wrestling business, saw the comeback, was inspired again, and they decided that they're going to run a show right in my neck of the woods, kind of where in the area I grew up in southern Minnesota. And he had asked me if naturally if I wanted to be a part of it, and I said, right. Yeah. What did you have in mind? So he asked if I'd come in and act as the commissioner or general manager or whatever it is. So I'm not working with them behind the scenes. It's strictly a day of show
Right.
deal. But yeah, it's just great to just kind of have all these little opportunities pop up and be a part of wrestling again.
Now, when you decided to do this, was there a point that you stepped back and you're like, why did I say yes? Like I want to be done with professional wrestling because I have this whole other very important part of my life where I'm going around talking to people about things, and we could get into that.
Yeah.
Did you question what am I doing here?
Yeah, when I had set out to do my return to the ring at the beginning of 2025, knowing that I would have my match at the end of 2025, I also knew that I was going to have to sunset a lot of my time around the wrestling business. Now, I didn't want to step away entirely from it,
right?
And I was more open to folding it back into my life if my schedule allowed. And that particular date works really well for me. It's also in the same, my in-laws live in the town he's running in. So it's just kind of like, we're there quite a bit anyway. And there really was no reason not to be a part of that one, but there have been some opportunities come up that just don't work for my schedule that I've had to turn down. And, but the ones that I can be a part of, I'm certainly trying to do the best I can with those.
When you decided that, my wrestling career is winding down, was there any one thing that scared you most about life after the ring?
Are we talking 20 years ago?
No, we're talking about recently here because, I'm talking about when you and I met was last year at, I think it was your retirement match that you're going to have. And that's when you said, hey, this is my last match and I'm also a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
So during that part of your life, was there anything that concerns you about you giving up?
The match that you saw live was the first time that I'd actually performed since July of 2007 as Cowboy.
Wow. Well, let me interrupt you then. Props for that, because there was no ring rust that I seen anyway. And I would have never known that. I thought it was Then I thought it was a really good match. Now it went from that was a good match to brings it up even a level higher because you had been out of the ring for that long to that was an amazing match, considering that you haven't been in there that long. You were great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I had trained with the weights and the cardio all year. When I knew that I was booked and we were going to work the angle for the year, I dropped about 20 pounds throughout 2025, and I was really getting fit. And then about a month, I think it was almost a month to the day before the match, there was a show in Western Minnesota that I got asked to be a part of, and I was doing a lot of appearances then, trying to ramp up my comeback. And a friend of mine who I wrestled with 20, 25 years ago said, "Hey, I live not far from there. What do you say I show up to the venue early before the crowd comes in, and you and I work out in the ring a little bit?" And I thought, yeah, please, because there was a wrestling school in the Twin Cities that allowed me to work out with them a little bit, and I was working off some of that ring rust. And so I got in the ring with this friend of mine, and we started bumping around a little bit. And I don't even know how it happened. We didn't do anything crazy that day. We were probably working out for 20 minutes maybe, and I realized something was wrong. I took a shoulder tackle. That's all I did. I bumped on my own, and I laid there for a second because I thought, this feels different. This is weird. Well, I was having trouble breathing, but we kept training. We were working through it, and about 2 or 3 days later, I've bruised my ribs enough to know that something, when something's wrong, it's really hard to breathe or sneeze or any of those things. And that's kind of what I was dealing with. So I went to the doctor, and they did some x-rays, and I had broken my ribs, and I had broken and just training. And I broke them in a way where, like they broke kind of like this toward my lung. And the doctor said, "Look, you're not wrestling. You can't do this." I said, "Look, I know I'm at risk of puncturing a lung here, but the match is signed. It's done. It's going to happen. It's a matter of how healed up am I going to be for my match against Aaron Corbin." So going into that match, I had broken ribs, and I re-injured them during the match. There was at one point, and Aaron knew it too. He knew that I was struggling with it. Aaron gave me a neck breaker. He said, "I'm going to give you a neck breaker." And we didn't work out a lot of stuff for that match. A lot of what you saw live was on the fly. We just worked. Yeah, we just worked. And Aaron's amazing. He kind of pulled my, rusty butt all the way through all of that. And all I had to do was perform and listen and breathe. And so, but he said, "I'm going to give you a neck breaker. And if you are struggling, you have to let me know." So here comes the neck breaker. We both bump. And I leaned over to him and I said, "I'm not good, man. I'm not good." He said, "Don't worry about it. We'll work through it." And we kept working. That was in the first third of the match, and we just kept going. So, that match, that's some of the stuff that nobody realizes. It's been almost 20 years since I wrestled, and I was doing it with broken ribs. So I'm very proud of how that match turned out, given all of the circumstances around it.
Right. When you came out, man, there was a pop. You definitely got a pop. Was there part of you that was concerned?
Yeah.
About people remembering you?
I was less concerned about that, believe it or not, than I was because my kids had never seen me wrestle before. I quit wrestling when my wife was pregnant with our daughter, who's now a senior in high school.
Right.
And I was more worried that I wasn't going to be able to wow my kids. And my mom was there as well, and her husband. And my mom has only seen me wrestle one time in my entire career. So it was kind of a new thing for her too. And I was so worried to let them down. And but I knew I could kind of work the charisma enough to show out. And there were a lot of people that showed up just for that show, from my past friends, family, former wrestlers, all kinds of people, just to come and support me and see me. And so I had that pressure building. What's funny is I put there was video footage of me that I put out on my Instagram of, you can see me behind the curtain as my music is starting. And I'm nervous, but I'm not really in the zone. And that's the thing about, before wrestlers go out, there's usually this moment of clarity or nervousness. It's just all of the butterflies and everything. I wasn't feeling it. And I don't know why. I was doing everything right. I just wasn't in the right headspace. So subsequently I talked to Aaron afterwards, and here's what he had to tell me. we stood nose to nose in the ring right as the bell rang. And it was, like I said, completely unscripted. And we're looking at each other. He didn't say a word to me, and he hauled off and he hit me across the face as hard as he could. And I knew why he did it in that moment. And I hauled off and I hit him back. When we got to the locker room, he said, "Look, I'm sorry I hit you, but I saw Mike. I didn't see Gator. And I was hoping that if I hit you hard enough, I'd shake him out of you."
Right.
And he's like, and it worked. He's like, after that, you were fine. So I had such a struggle. I'd been away from the character for so long as a performer that I was having a hard time separating Mike Kinney from Cowboy Gator Magraw in that exact moment where I needed to be Cowboy Gator Magraw more than ever. So, but it was, that's kind of how it worked out. And I wasn't nervous about the fans remembering me. I think that we built a good enough angle for the entire year where at least if you were following MAW, you'd know what was going on. And the fans that didn't know one way or the other, I think that we had enough excitement during the match with the table spot and these kinds of things where people could kind of get into it without knowing exactly who we were. So that's where my headspace was with that.
Talk to me about the difference 20 years ago, your last match versus your last match on that night. Where's your head at 20 years ago after the match versus after the match last year or a few months ago?
Yeah, in 2007, my head wasn't great, especially for that last year. I had let myself go a little bit. I had grown my hair out a little bit, which is I've had the same haircut since like 6th grade. So I was wearing a lot of black. I was trying to hide. I was doing all of these weird things, and I didn't realize it at the time. But I knew then that I was struggling with the idea that I wasn't going to be a wrestler anymore, and I was scared. I didn't know what the rest of my life was going to look like, and my wife was pregnant, like I told you, and I knew that fatherhood was kind of on the horizon, and I was needing to go in that direction. I thought I was ready for it. And I just wasn't ready to give up wrestling. And I realize now that I wasn't leaving wrestling on my own terms, even though at the time I thought I was. But it makes sense to me now because I slipped into a depression for about 5 or 6, it was a little longer than that, probably 7 years after that, a long time before I could finally, find myself again through other ways. And I really, I was drinking before that, my final match in 2007, which became a very common thing back then. And frankly, alcohol in the locker room was super common everywhere. And it's not now, but back then it was. And so it wasn't uncommon for the guys to kick a bunch back before their matches. And, I wasn't in the right headspace for my final match. I just wasn't ready for any of it. In fact, I remember the match, and I wrestled a very good friend of mine. He wrestled as Casanova. And he was a very good worker. And at one point during the match, I was so blown up, I'd leaned over to him and I said, "We got to go home now, man." Cause and he said, "Get your fat ass off this mat. We're going to finish this the right way." And so he kind of pulled me through. I just didn't want to be there. I didn't want anything to do with it. And then you fast forward to 2025, socially, professionally, I'm a completely different person. I've, up to that point, almost to the day, I was sober 10 years. I just was in a completely different phase of my life, and I had prepared for it. I prepared for it in the right way. I was eating right. I was doing all of the right things to make sure that I could show up and perform at the absolute best level, because I knew that I'm never going to get another opportunity at that. And MAW took a big chance on me. Luckily, I've known those guys for 25 years.
Right.
Because when I pitched the angle to them, they jumped on it and they were like, "Let's do this." They knew they believed in me enough, and that gave me enough confidence to go, okay, if the promoters believe in me, I can do this. And so I worked very, very hard to make that happen. And I, social media campaigns, all kinds of stuff to bring reawareness to who I was in the wrestling business in the state of Minnesota.
What was the moment that you realized that you wanted to be the speaker, to talk to people, instead of just moving on as a guy that retired from professional wrestling?
So I was always very good at speaking. I was, class president in high school. And, in fact, you're going to love this story. When I was a when I was a sophomore, I was running for student council for my junior year. And this is in the 90s now, late 90s. And Stone Cold Steve Austin was on fire. Austin 316 was everywhere. Well, I get kind of, especially in high school, I was very anti-establishment, and I showed up on stage for my speech in front of my entire class, about 300 people. And I had a button-up shirt, and I took it off, and underneath was a black T-shirt in white letters that said Kinney 316. And I said, if you think the school and the rules suck here, give me a hell yeah. And the whole student body got up, hell yeah. I mean, it put me on the map socially in high school. And, but I got suspended for that. And, I was always being asked to be the MC and stuff like that in school. And then I got the opportunity in 2017 to do a TED Talk. Mm-hmm. And that thing went viral quickly. And I started to get some opportunities to do some speaking engagements. And then COVID happened and everything got put on the back burner. And during COVID, I was like, man, if we ever come out of this, it'd be awesome to be able to get back out there. And I did a little musical theater kind of at the tail end of COVID, just to get back on stage and kind of get that presence going again. And a friend of mine whose brother-in-law kind of went through some of the same hardships that I did in my corporate career where I got laid off. This guy was a principal of a middle school. My friend's brother-in-law, principal of a middle school, got laid off also, and then started chasing the professional speaker route. And he was doing very well at that point. He'd only been doing it a few years, 5 or so. And my friend made the intro. And so he and I had a very long conversation about what did I have to do to be able to get my name out there, to be able to get bookings, to be able to really polish this 12, 13-minute TED Talk that I did and expand it into a possible 60-minute keynote that delivers tools and motivation to people about confidence after setbacks. So, and I'm still working on that now. I'm involved with the National Speakers Association, and I'm taking their courses, which end in May this year. And so they're really helping me kind of hone my craft. And and I'm around some amazing people through it as well. People that have their doctorate degrees or whatever, right? There's kind of all races and creeds and backgrounds, and it's a really cool kind of melting pot of people, but they all have the ability to speak well, and they all have a message to give. So it's just kind of this great fusion of everything going on that's really got me super excited to get back out and do more and more speaking.
Explain to people who may have never heard this TED Talk before. What is TED Talk?
TED Talks are really, I was told they are the hardest level of public speaking outside of running for public office. And they are about anywhere from 8 to 15-minute ideas that are expanded into this moment where a speaker gets up and they stand on this red circle carpet and they deliver a message. And the TED organization has some very specific rules about this. Whatever you talk about on that stage, you have to be an expert in it, whatever it is. So if I were to deliver a TED Talk on changing the oil in my car, it wouldn't be a very good one, man, because I don't know how to do it. But pro wrestling, which is part of what my TED Talk was about, I knew I was an expert at. And they also said that your message, your story is about you, but it's not for you. Your story should be about, I remember this so specifically because I thought it was so odd. They said your story should be able to reach the single mother in Manila and make her feel the feels. And I was like, man, why the single mother? And they said, because you couldn't have less in common with her. And if it resonates with that kind of person, it's going to resonate with everybody. And I was just like, that's kind of one of those light bulb moments, you know?
Do you feel like professional wrestling prepared you to be in this spotlight? Motivational speaker, the TED Talks?
If you were to have asked me that 6 months ago, I would have said no. And the reason that I would have said no is because I'm a firm believer in either you have the talent to do it or you do not. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, it could be anything. You either have the skill innately or you do not. What I'm learning is that messages and speakers can be trained just like professional wrestlers. And so the other thing that I've noticed during this is that I know what my skill set is, and I can there in my class that I'm taking, there's about 25 of us. I can tell where I'm at in the echelon of those 25 people. And I'm not gonna I'm gonna toot my own horn because I can, but I know I'm in the top third of that. My instructors told me I'm in the top third, if not the top three people in that class. So what I'm finding is happening is that wrestling had actually prepared me a lot more than what I thought. And what I mean by that is we are being asked to stand and deliver and give them and tell a story in front of strangers. That's professional wrestling. We're telling stories in the ring. The other thing that we're trained as wrestlers to do is to talk in sound bites. And and what I mean by that is think about any wrestling interview you've ever seen, especially the ones on TV. Those are condensed messages that are trying to resonate to sell tickets or to move the angle in another direction, right? But it's a story that's condensed to 60 seconds or less usually. People who are going into the speaking world don't understand that. And so we also have, in the group of 25, we also have small cohort groups of like 4 or 5 people where we get together on the side and really act as like a study group together. So I'm explaining to them, if you guys can start speaking in sound bites, you take those clips and you add those to your social medias. And I just had to explain to them how all that kind of works. So yeah, wrestling prepared me more than I even knew going into the speaking world. It was really a great proving ground for that, for sure.
When it comes to motivational speaking, did motivational speaking find you, or is this something that you went out and that you chased?
It found me. And here's how. So I got that opportunity to do the TED Talk. I didn't even know what they were. At the time I was working for UPS, and the TED organization had a relationship. UPS had a relationship with the TED organization, and the group at TED, they had solicited all 500,000 UPS employees for ideas to do a TED Talk. And this was the third year. What was happening is they were selecting 12 speakers that were employees all over the world. They were flying them into Atlanta, Georgia for a full day, like full red carpet rollout. I mean, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this event. And when they had solicited, it was like January of 2017. Now, there was a woman who had performed the year before at this event through UPS that had done, she was a writer for soap operas before she'd come to UPS. And so she had done life lessons learned from watching soap operas. And I saw her TED Talk and I went, oh, well, I could do life lessons learned about watching professional wrestling. I was never going to talk about me as a wrestler.
Right.
So the TED organization got a hold of this thing, and they set me up on some Zoom calls, and they really vetted me out to see what I knew. And through them, they were like, wow, you've got a great story, the character building, all of this stuff. Like, let's make that the focus of this. I was selected to do it. And they had warned me that we're going to take 5. There were 12 speakers selected, and they were going to take 5 of us and put us on TED.com. I still didn't quite knew what that meant, but I found out about midnight the day before my actual TED Talk performance that I was going to be the 12th of 12 speakers. Main event time, right? And so I knew I was in the green room that day, and we had a live feed from the stage, so we could see what was going on stage. And there's all these speakers up there who are really high up the ladder at UPS that are forgetting their lines. They're needing to pull their notes out. I mean, they're really just crapping the bed on the whole thing. And I was like, okay, I'm the main event, man. I got to go up there and do my thing and show out. And when you watch my TED Talk, it is completely unedited. And that's the one thing that I want to let everybody know. The thing about the TED Talks is that lots and lots and lots of them are edited down because people screw up on stage and they just try to polish them. I begged and pleaded with them, do not change anything about my TED Talk. There's one moment in the TED Talk where we have like a microphone on our face, and there's an earpiece that just pops off my ear for no reason whatsoever. And I felt it. And I reach up and I start adjusting it. And I said, during that moment, when I do that, just pan to the crowd. That's all I ask. But keep it going. Like, don't change anything else. So the way you see my TED Talk is actually how it happened live. I got a standing ovation at the end. The CEO of UPS and all his people are sitting right in front of me. My family's there. And then I went home. It was in Atlanta, and I went home the next week, and Didn't think anything of it. And about 6 weeks later, I got a call from one of the vice presidents at UPS. He said, they have selected your TED Talk to go to TED.com. And then they had assigned me to someone, public relations from TED. And they started scrubbing my social medias. They're making sure that, like, if they were going to put me on their platform, that I didn't have, I wasn't a felon, or I wasn't any, like any of these things. So they also told me, you're going to get a lot of opportunities to do speaking events, but every one of them that you do, for as long as you're employed at UPS, has to be approved by UPS, because they own the IP since they put the event on. And so that's what I did. Every time I got an opportunity to speak, I had to run it up the corporate ladder, and sometimes that took really long, and there were opportunities that they told me no to. But speaking was finding me through that process, just because people had seen the TED Talk, And at this point, as we're talking right now, it's been viewed 1.6 million times, which is pretty amazing.
Wow. It is. You mentioned that you didn't want to edit it. I don't edit my podcast, and people always say, why don't you edit it? Because I want it to be real.
Yeah.
That I want to come across as being real. I don't want it to be perfect. I want real life, real shit.
Yeah.
Is that why you didn't want your speech edited?
I did. And there's a lot of vulnerability. I choke up during it. I talk a lot about losing my dad. It's a very intimate TED Talk. And, but I also was skilled enough to pull people back out of that and bring them along on the journey with me during it. And so I wanted to make sure that the feelings that were being felt in that room, because it was electric, man. Like, I'll never forget it. There's never going to be anything like it. I never felt that in the ring, where all these people are just leaned in and they want to know what the next words coming out of your mouth. Like, they're so vested in what you're doing. I wanted it to try to come through on video as people were watching it. And I think it has somewhat, because of the feedback I've gotten. I mean, there are many schools throughout the United States, maybe beyond, but that show my TED Talk on a very regular basis to their students. And the only reason I know that is because of how many teachers have reached out to me, thanking me for it, saying how good it was. I show my students all the time, yada, 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 right? And I'm very honored about that. But I think some of that has to do with the authenticity that comes through during the TED Talk. Like, people can smell BS a mile away. And I think that with what I pulled off that day, nobody's ever going to touch it,
Were you more nervous going back to your rookie years of professional wrestling, of walking to the ring? Were you more nervous walking to that ring, or were you more nervous walking to that stage to talk in front of people?
That's a good question. I think the stakes were different. I was always nervous before I wrestled, always. And I think that's good. I think that lets you know that you're in the moment. It's that, Eminem wrote a song about it, right? It's like, knees weak, arms are heavy, like, lose yourself. That's the song. That song, the first time I heard it, I was like, God, it was almost like he's a pro wrestler getting ready to walk out to the ring. Yeah, I think that. And it also depended on who I was wrestling, where the show was at, who was in the crowd. All of those things kind of contributed at different levels. The difference is that, though it was 10 years after I got done wrestling that I did the TED Talk, the stakes were different, because I was working my way up the corporate ladder, and all of the decision makers on the rest of my career were sitting in that crowd with their eyes on me. It was corporate exposure at the absolute highest level possible. As a Fortune 50 company, all eyes on me.
Wow. Yeah.
Just a different level, right? It's just the stakes were just different. I think that I will tell you this, though. There is a certain level of comfort that I find as a wrestler going out. And I think that was part of the shtick that I used to do when I would sing my song with the crowd. It would help me kind of settle in. And it was always very helpful for me, especially when I was working as a babyface. But I knew when I was ready, like, I would settle into my boots, so to speak. The day that I did it. Go ahead.
No, that's good. That was actually going to be one of my next questions. Oftentimes you hear professional wrestlers talk about the nerves, but as soon as they walk in between the ropes, they feel at home. That's their area.
Yeah.
Was that the same for you when you hit the stage to speak? That, okay, this is my, or was it different because you didn't feel as protected, or you feel more exposed?
You're very exposed. You're not nearly as protected, and it's just you. No referee, no opponent, not a 6-man tag, not even a tag match. It's
Right.
just you. And you're standing on a circular rug that you're not allowed to step off of. So
Wow.
you're also confined to a space. But here's the kicker of that. I was nervous, and I'm a free perspirer, as they say. I will sweat in winter. And it was Atlanta in July, and I was wearing a suit. So brother, I was warm. And
Right.
so, but you know, the thing about that is wrestling had prepared me for that. I always remember when I'm really nervous, eat something.
Mhm.
Our diets were controlled before we performed for 48 hours leading up to it. Nothing that, you know, I'm sitting here drinking a energy drink right now, no caffeine, nothing carbonated, no spicy foods, nothing that's very acidic. So it was very, very plain food,
Right.
just trying to like level our bodies out. I was trying to eat something backstage. I wasn't hungry. You know how that gets when you're really nervous, you're just not
Right.
hungry. I was trying to eat something, and they had some catering for us. And I'm kind of like behind the curtain, getting ready to go out. They're getting ready to introduce me, and there's a makeup artist back behind stage, and she looked at me. She's like, "You were sweating so hard." I said, "I know that." And she goes, "Okay, suck your lips in and shut your eyes. I'll take care of it." And she goes, "But whatever you do, do not lick your lips." So she had this giant sponge that she saturated with rubbing alcohol, and she doused it all over my face so that it would dry up. She said, "I just bought you 10 minutes." And I said, "That's all I need." I licked my lips immediately. And so your mouth goes, whoop, and I didn't have any water or anything. And I'm like, okay, don't freak out. Don't freak out. And they're getting ready. Mike Kinney, right? And this is all kind of happening in real time. I'm getting ready to walk onto the stage. The woman who introduced me worked for the TED organization, and she was at times difficult to deal with. And she and I'd had it out a few times because we didn't agree on some certain things. And I'm very outspoken when I don't agree with something. And, but we got along well. We were very professional with each other, but we both knew where each other stood on certain topics. I was honored she picked me as the final speaker. So as she's walking off stage and I'm walking on, I leaned over to her and I said, "Watch this." Because I knew as I was walking on that I was ready. I prepared, like I hadn't prepared for anything like that in my life, but I knew I was ready. And so I think that had I not been that level of confident and ready to do it, it would have been a completely different deal. But, you know, standing up there exposed like that, it's a literal stand and deliver moment. And if I knew that if I couldn't make it through that moment, then I was going to lose all credibility with some of these people in the crowd. But again, I think what really saved me was I can be, you put a microphone in my hand anywhere, I'll be charismatic as I need to be.
Right.
And I've never, ever had a problem with that. I've been doing musical theater since I was in second grade, you know, so I know how to work a stage. I know how to work a crowd.
Right.
In fact, I've had some theater directors get pissed at me because when I know my role really well, sometimes I'll go off script and I'll do a little improv, and they hate that. But I know how to work the crowd. I know how to listen to the crowd, and I've never had a crowd turn on me. So anyway, I digress. I guess what I'm saying is that stakes are always different, but I prepared seamlessly for that TED Talk, and I think that helped me prepare in a new way for my return in 2025.
I'll go back to UPS. You talked about everything had to go through the corporate ladder. Everything had to be approved. Did that make you feel restricted, especially if you felt like your message, you had a very specific message that you felt like you were called to deliver, right? Did UPS make you feel restricted? And if so, did professional wrestling help with that aspect? Because there may be times you talk about going off script that, you know, the promotion's like, nope, you need to stay right here type of a thing. Talk to me about all that.
You ask very great questions. I want you to know that.
Thank you.
I told everybody after we got done last time, I said, this guy's asking me questions I've never been asked before.
Thank you.
You know, there was a speaking opportunity that I got, and I really wanted to do it. It was in, I think it was in Michigan, and it was for a camp for kids. And it was a grievance camp. So all of the kids that were at this camp had either just lost a parent or a sibling or a friend or somebody. They were all there. They were grieving somebody. and they were all experiencing loss together. The leaders of this camp had seen my TED talk. And I speak a lot about losing my dad and how to kind of cross that bridge after you've lost someone like that. And I was very young when I lost my dad, right? And so I was so excited to go and do this. I would have done it for free. I mean, being a wrestler when I'm speaking, kids immediately gravitate toward me because of it. And I was amped to do it, man. I was so excited. And then I do everything UPS asked me to do. I run it up the ladder. I got to get the approval from this one guy. And they denied it. They said no.
Wow.
And I was upset. I was pretty pissed about it. And I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to go out there. So I'm going to take some PTO and I'm going to do it on my own. They said, if you do that, we will fire you. We will fire you. And I was really, really trying to work my way into the next level there. I knew I was close. So I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. And I said, okay, I won't take it. But there was a few instances like that really soured me to it, because it was like, why can't I go do some of these things? The only stuff they were approving was stuff that was local to me. If it wasn't within like a 2-hour drive, they weren't allowing me to fly anywhere, and it's like, well, what are we doing then? And they told me, they said, as long as you work here, everything. I said, what if I work here for 40 years? They said, everything has to get approved.
Wow.
So that really, really hurt me. And I was turned off to speaking because of it. I was like, okay, fine. Then I'm not going to speak at all. Screw you guys. I'm just gonna focus on my day-to-day job and do what I need to do to provide for my family. So that was kind of the weird situation I was put in because of my speaking.
Do you have a targeted audience? And if so, why?
Yeah, I do. You were talking about the speaking, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really think that associations and corporations are going to resonate more with my message, because I'm speaking to leaders about how to rebuild confidence after setbacks, and I'm using my journey in professional wrestling to kind of help be the vessel to tell that story. I know it works with those groups because especially with associations, there's so many varying levels of backgrounds that can, everybody knows something about pro wrestling.
Right.
Or maybe they watched it a little bit with their grandpa. Here's how I know this. I'm just going to give you a clean answer. The night of my TED Talk, we had a dinner with the CEO and his cabinet of people at UPS. And it was the dinner was only for those people, the speakers from that day, and one guest. I took my wife with. So it was this kind of like intimate gala that they ended up doing for us. It was very, very ritzy. I was way out of my comfort zone. In a room full of these millionaires, right? And the CEO of UPS sat next to me for dinner, right next to me. And he started off, and I knew him a little bit. I'd interacted with him a little bit before that, but we never had any like in-depth conversations about who we were as human beings. He thanked me for the message that I gave because it reminded him of his grandfather and how he used to watch wrestling with his grandpa, and how, he was going through all the emotions of having lost his grandfather while I'm on stage. And it was just like, wow, this message is really going to hit in all the corners of the globe. And so that's how I know with the associations and the corporations that it will work, because the diverse background that's there. The other audience that I'm leaning into right now is people in the veteran space. And I was at a meeting 2 nights ago, and I'm a veteran also. And so I was at a meeting 2 nights ago where it's this really cool thing. It's called the Eagle Group, and it's either people who are looking to hire veterans, or it's veterans who are looking for work. And they hire a speaker, and then there's this great message that gets given. And at the very end, they're like, okay, who's looking for work? And they're standing up. Okay, what's your background in? It's an IT. Okay, do we have anybody here? And they almost run it like an auction house. It's amazing. And they hire people very, very quickly because of it. And I interacted with them earlier this year, and I was like, wow, I really have to get involved with this group. So now it looks like this fall I'll be speaking at that event. So that's another group that I think that I'll be able to resonate with.
Do you ever feel like with what you went through with depression, because I'm there with you. I went through a really bad depression, especially with the loss of my father. And I know from firsthand experience that Just because you see someone out and they look like they're having a good time, that doesn't mean anything. If people would have seen me out partying and I was having a great time, and people would have never ever known that my intent that night was to drink so much that I was hoping that night would be the night I would pass in my
Yeah.
sleep because I was so drunk. And I have to write about that at times to help try to reach other people.
Yeah.
So on with your talent with speaking, do you ever feel like you should be targeting that audience as well, or do you stay away from that for certain reasons?
I think that I don't stay away from it, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I haven't specifically targeted it yet, and the reason is all financially related. I need to lift my speaking business up this year more than ever.
Right.
And the association and corporate gigs pay more than anybody else does.
Mm.
And so once I get some revenue rolling, I want to do things. I told you that I do well with students. Well, schools don't
Right.
pay very well, but
Right.
I don't really care if I've got the autonomy to go speak to kids. I'm going to speak to kids. I love speaking to kids. The other thing, in veterans groups, that's going to be awesome. There's other groups I'm going to reach out to, FFA, DECA, and recovery groups. Those are all on my target list for 2026 and 2027. And I think that I'm going to find a home with some of those. It's going to be a really, really good thing. But as it stands right this second, my primary focus has been associations and corporations.
You talked about just a moment ago UPS and how you got to the point that you're like, fine, I'm just not going to speak at all. Is that the only time you've ever got to the point that you just didn't want to do it no more? That you maybe sat back and wondered, man, why am I doing this? I stepped away from professional wrestling. Maybe I should just be spending every extra second that I have with my family and not do any of this.
That's exactly where my brain was at. My wife very much supported my corporate career. And you have to understand something about my corporate career and why it was so important to me. I started working for UPS at 3 o'clock in the morning, unloading trailers. That was my job.
Right.
I started doing that job 2 months before I left professional wrestling back in 2007. So I was a grunt. I was literally like the worst job on the worst shift. Within a year, I became a supervisor, and my daughter was born, and I had just left wrestling. And I was kind of working I had gone back to school, and so I was trying to get my bachelor's degree, and I was kind of doing all of these things. And I realized that it was like I started to feel at home there. And I needed that so badly because that was the depth of my depression.
Mhm.
And feeling like I belonged somewhere again was important to me. And that's how I felt about UPS. So I would have run through a brick wall for them at one point.
Right.
And, my career there lasted for 14 years. I left there as an incredibly high performing sales manager, leading a team of, I want to say, 6 sales reps that covered most of the state of Minnesota. And we were one of the best sales team in the country. And I loved it. And that's the job I wanted.
Right.
I loved being a sales guy because I eventually worked my way into a sales role there, and I did it for about 4 or 5 years, and I loved it. What I liked even more was training people. And it kind of goes back to my roots of when I first started college way back in the day. I was going to be a teacher, and I dropped out of college, and so I never finished it. But I found my home training salespeople, especially brand new ones. And I knew that being a sales manager was going to be like that job. It pays really, really well. It's kind of like the gig. And I was chasing it hard, man. And I finally got it, worked my way up from unloading trailers to being paid incredibly well for doing something that I truly loved. I loved watching sales reps win. I loved winning, but I love watching them win more. They have this look about them, this
Right.
excitement, and that fueled me. And I loved doing it. I was a corporate sales trainer for a while before that. I got to travel across the upper Midwest and break all the new salespeople in for UPS, all of them. And I loved that job. And so I've always found my place there. And it was just a bummer how it kind of all ended for me. But I was working so hard to get to that next level that, I'm going to put the speaking thing down. I'm going to provide for my family. And we'll just see where the rest of this takes us,
You talked about the sales reps, and seeing that expression of face when they succeeded. going back to professional wrestling, is that something that drove you during your matches, was seeing the expressions of your audience when they were truly just enjoying what you were doing in the ring?
It's one of the reasons I love being a babyface so much. It was
Right.
because, if you get really good at being a performer, I don't care what moves you do. You could
Right.
you could do all the Ring of Honor moves or whatever moves you want. To me, the moves don't matter. It's the, what am I trying to say? It's the emotional connection that you create to people. It is the theater that you are making because of who you are. It is the memories that you're creating for families who are out there. You're there to be an entertainer. I don't care what moves you do. So for me, being that entertainer was first and foremost important to me because I valued that connection with people. And it's really, for me, it's the same exact thing for speaking. I'll speak all day long on a webinar if somebody wants me
Right.
to, but live, looking eye to eye with someone, connecting with people in the crowd, talking to them afterwards, and listening to what resonated with them. And I'm talking about wrestling and speaking.
Right.
Knowing that you moved somebody in some way out of pure intention is an amazing power to have. And it's addicting. And that's why you see a lot of guys in professional wrestling, that's all they know, but they are addicted to the connection. And they never leave. They have a hard time leaving wrestling or finding a substitute for it. I think it's amazing. I'm going to use Wade Barrett. I don't know why he just popped into my head, but I'm going to use Wade Barrett as the example. Wade Barrett was a very solid WWE performer. And he got hurt and had to kind of make adjustments and pivot a little bit. And now he's an analyst, right? He's on TV as basically like what you would see on SportsCenter or something, but he does it for WWE. He does that because, yeah, they're going to pay him and he's still kind of, part of the family, the WWE family, but he's still connecting with people. And he's one of the lucky ones that's able to make that transition. When I broke into wrestling, there were guys that were still around that shouldn't have been around,
Right.
because they couldn't perform and they couldn't connect. But I think that if you can find if you're passionate about that connection with people, because believe it or not, dude, I've met pro wrestlers who hate people, baby faces who hate people. They'll go out to the ring, they'll smack all the high fives and all that stuff and smile for the fans and photos, but man, they hate every second of it. They're miserable people. And I wasn't like that. I always looked forward to that. I still to this day do not charge for autographs. I think if somebody wants my autograph, I'm not going to charge you for that. That's ridiculous.
Right.
And who am I, right, to charge you for an autograph? But people at the independent level do, and they shouldn't.
Right.
And that's my opinion. But create that connection. That's what we're here for. And there's something incredibly powerful about that.
You talked about TED Talk and how you have to be one of the rules is you have to be an expert. Whatever you talk about, you have to be an expert. Well, whatever you're talking about there, although you may be an expert on whatever you're talking about, do you feel like that you're also delivering who Mike Kinney is during that talk? And if so, do you feel validated when you're doing this? And did you feel valid? Do you get that enough of that validation that you feel like your transition from wrestling to speaker has been a very smooth, successful one?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Gosh, can you repeat the beginning of it?
Sure. The beginning of it is you have to be an expert, whatever you're talking about in TED Talk. Being an expert and being who Mike Kinney is that two different things for you? Or do you believe people actually get who Mike Kinney is during that TED Talk?
Yeah, I think that I didn't, the word authentic is so overrated and it gets thrown around a lot.
Right.
And there's something about my TED Talk that other people have pointed out to me that comes across as so genuine and so authentic that it's really hard to stop watching it. Truth be told, I was terrified to deliver that message for two reasons. Number one, I've never been a big fan of exposing the business. The business has done a good job of exposing it on their own over all these years. So I kind of just fit right in between, and I'll expose as much as has been exposed, but I won't tell you everything. I'm one of those guys. Um, I was so afraid to expose the wrestling business. More importantly, I was scared to I was scared that the guys I used to wrestle with would think I was full of shit. I was scared that the fans would be like, "Who's this guy? He's never been anywhere or done anything," which was the point of my TED talk, by the way. Um, I was, I had imposter syndrome so bad over that whole thing. I've been away from wrestling for so long at that point, and I was just like, I didn't want to seem like the guy who was still trying to hang on, but man, I
Right.
needed it so bad, and I didn't even know it. And I think that what happened is that I'm very lucky that I had the opportunity to do that. I was through my depression at the point when I did the TED talk, but I found my voice and the power. I learned the power of someone's individual voice, as cheesy as that sounds, through doing my TED talk. And it made me believe that there was more that I could deliver. I
Mhm.
think that money aside from the speaking world, being able to move people or touch one person spiritually to get them to think a little bit differently, because that's all we're doing is we're just trying to
Right.
get you to just reframe your thinking a little bit. And to just be able to do that, I was scared that I didn't have enough qualifications to do it. You know, like I'm just some knucklehead pro wrestler from back in the day. Who was he to tell me? But the key to all of it is that you're not telling them how to live. They're learning how to live through listening to your story. Completely different. It's a
Right.
completely different way of thinking about it, you know. So that's kind of how I unpacked all of that between wrestling and the TED Talk. So I think that by the time I got to be Gator again in 2025, I understood the power of that. I understood that what I'm doing is moving people far beyond wrestling. There's
Right.
something else here, and I need to understand that, which is why I got on the microphone at the end and wanted everybody to know there's always still a little bit more fight left in all of us. And that was me. That was you. You got to see me as more authentic in that ring that day than I'd ever
Right.
been. And
Right.
so, and I'm okay with that. You know, I think it makes it more believable. Anybody can walk into that show and go, well, those other couple of matches were bullshit, but that Cowboy Gator McGraw guy, holy cow. Even if one person said that, it's like, okay, it worked. And I'm going to continue down that road.
Now, did it validate your transition from wrestler to speaker, or you didn't need that validation?
I didn't really need it. As I look at it now, it's more like I still have imposter syndrome from time to time. I still go to events currently where I will sit in that parking lot and I'll go, I can't go in there because these people are way more qualified than I am to do this. They're way better than I am. And then at some point I have to be like, okay, you're moving toward this. You've done something that's way harder. It's a lot of like positive self-reflection to try to
Mhm.
just get my butt out of my car and into the building. And once I do that, I'm fine. But it's that gap. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think there's hundreds
Right.
and thousands of people that deal with that all the time. And it's just that like what's getting me through the door. So, you know, I try to do the best I can at being me. And I don't know what else to do in that regard. But what I am finding is that when I have conversations with other speakers, especially the ones that have been doing it a really long time, and they hear my background and what
Mhm.
message I could apply to the stage, they're just like, you can see something shift. I know they're looking at me as competition, and I love that because it lets me know that okay, I'm on the right path. Then, if they're looking at me as competition, then I must be doing something right.
Now, do you think that if you removed professional wrestling completely out of your talks, that you could reach as many people? Or is it one of the things that, no, Kelvin, because without professional wrestling, there's no speaker? The two interlock with one another.
I think I would be doing people an injustice if they didn't know my background. I think that there's something that's the differentiator for me in the speaker marketplace is that I was a wrestler.
Mhm.
What makes it, believe it or not, what makes it more appealing is that I never made it on TV. Nobody knows who I am. I'm a guy who chased his dream and only succeeded at a regional level.
Mhm.
And so there's something romantic about that. When people hear that story, it's like, wow, like being a wrestler is one thing, but like when they hear how much exposure I had to the business and how long I did it for and all of those things, what I learned from it, how I developed the character. And then that's just the first part of the keynote that I give.
Mhm.
I had I talk about my addiction and my depression in it. I talk about my corporate career. I talk about how one day I was at work and I realized that my boss didn't know anything about me and that I was climbing the ladder, right? And it was against the wrong goddamn wall.
Right.
And that's part of the message. And I got laid off twice in 12 months after that. Twice in 12 months. I'm the self-confidence guy. You know what that did to my confidence, getting laid off twice in a
Right.
year? Oh my God. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was able to take that story as well. And what I ended up doing was taking both of those layoffs and applying the lessons I had taught in my TED Talk to myself to be able to move to the next thing. And it was so helpful in
Right.
that way. So it's all part of the story. It all has
Right.
to be there. It's not just because it sets me apart in the marketplace, it's because it laid the foundation for who I am as a human being. And
Right.
so I think I'm lucky in a way where I can show up with a custom made wrestling belt and it makes sense to what I'm doing and it sets me apart and people get excited about it. And, I was at the event. I told you I was at this event on Wednesday. We started doing this social hour and
Mhm.
we're mingling with people. We're talking. This guy walks over to me, perfect stranger. He'd heard me say something about professional wrestling to somebody else. He says, "Did you say you were a professional wrestler?" And now we're opening up a whole dialogue. He asked me who was on my Mount Rushmore of pro wrestlers. He asked me who I liked. And it was just like, we're strangers. He has a different
Right.
life path than I do, but we connected in that moment because of professional wrestling. And it's a beautiful thing, man. And so wrestling fans are so passionate. They will come seek you out. And
Mhm.
especially if I'm out there talking on a stage, I'll find them and they'll find me and we'll have a great conversation. And we have.
Every professional wrestler who retired from the business has said the same thing. The hardest part was to giving up, leaving professional wrestling was the crowd, walking out to that crowd. In your case, do you get that same rush walking out to the crowd that you're going to speak to that you did in professional, that the rush that you get before you got into a match, or is it two totally different things to you?
Jeez, you're just hitting with the good questions today. It is I get more nervous speaking. And here's why. Going and talking in front of a crowd for any length of time, especially an hour where you have to remember everything, is pretty nerve wracking. It's just you, you're fully exposed. And I can't hide behind a fictitious character. If
Right.
something was a mishap at a wrestling show, I could chalk it up to, well, that was how Gator Magraw would react. Mike Kinney is a completely different entity, not in the speaking world, man, because what they see needs to be authentic. They want to see Mike Kinney, right? And so if I have way more to lose doing the speaking stuff than I did as a professional wrestler. And it's because of the kind of the structure of it, the level of it, the exposure to it. And so yeah, I get more nervous now, believe it or not.
Yep. Last question, and I think in many ways this might be the most important question I'm going to ask you. You have someone who hates their job, man. They're miserable. But society says, be thankful in today's world. You got a job. You're paying your bills. You're taking care of your family. What would you tell that person?
Oh, that's so common right now. I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and they're very comfortable having this conversation with me specifically because, especially if they know my background.
Right.
So here's where I start. I always start with, what is it you want to do? I don't mean like do you want to go watch a Minnesota Twins game? I like what do you like, who do you want to be? Do you want to unload trailers at 3 o'clock in the morning for UPS? If you do, that's fine. Are you there? So I usually try to help them understand, like, where are they today? And then what's the goal? I did a seminar with a bunch of pro wrestlers last weekend on sales and marketing. And this is one of the things I was teaching them. Where are you today? And where do you want to be? Okay. That's where you have to start. because that gap between here and there, that's the heavy lifting. That's the hard work. That's the strategy that you have to put in place in order for you to be able to reach that goal. And I'm a firm believer that everybody needs to have goals. They don't need to be, you don't need to say, I want to be the president of the United States. If you do, great, but it doesn't have to be that kind of goal. Maybe it was, I just want to be a sales manager for UPS. Maybe that's the goal. Okay, where am I today? What do I need to do to get there? And I was doing those things to make that happen. You have to get really, really good at having people also tell you no. So keep that in your head. If you're going to set a goal, people are going to scoff at you. And it's because those types of people do not know how to get to the next level in their lives. They're miserable where they're at, so they want everybody else to be miserable around them. So you got to ignore the noise, and you have to learn from what they're saying. You have to learn what not to do in a lot of instances. And it can take a toll on you. If you're not ready for that kind of rejection and those kind of put downs, you're going to be in a really, really tough spot. So the sooner you can get clarity around, okay, the outside noise does not matter to me. I'm going to continue to move forward and accomplish the goals that I've set for myself. But for anybody who isn't where they want to be, you have to understand, you have to look at, and you have to do it honestly. You have to look at where am I today? What's holding me back? What's my goal? If I don't have a goal, I need to be able to set one. And take your time. There's always time to make a really good decision. Always. And so take your time to make that goal. Figure out what it is. Now then work backwards from there. Work backwards from your goal. What steps need to be in place for you to be able to attain that? Is it a reasonable goal? Is it attainable? Can you measure it? Like, all these things need to go into your head. The only person that's going to get you there is you. Yes, you might need to make connections with people. Yes, you might need to do some networking. Yes, you might need to educate yourself. I don't know. But you have to put in the sweat equity to do that. Nobody else is going to do that for you. The only person that's invested in you to the level that needs to be done is you. The end.
And I apologize, I lied. I have 2 more questions for you.
Okay, bring them on.
Yep.
For you, I will answer as many questions as you like.
Well, I appreciate that. You talked about goals. What is Mike's end goal with all of this? And what obstacles have come in your way to reaching this end goal within your career of being the speaker?
Somebody once told me that I'm really good at risk assessment. And so what that means is that I can look at a situation, I can understand what the risk is, and then I can really decide if I want to chase it anyway. Normally, I weigh that out very, very well, and I've been pretty good at it. I do have a goal. I think that it's important for everybody at any walk of life, at any age, whatever, to have some kind of goal. My goal right this second is only one goal, professionally, I should say, one goal. Outside of my day job, I want to just kind of put that off to the side because I really love what I do there too. But my goal is to work for myself forever. I don't want to leave my current job and go work for someone else. If I do leave there, when I leave there at some point in my life, I'm going to work for me. So what needs to happen is I need to be able to get on stage as many times as I can. I need to be able to make sure that I'm pricing myself according to what the market will pay for it. I need to get some experience on that stage. And over time, what I'm learning from other speakers is that if you continue to apply sales principles to this speaking profession, you will be a wild success. Just so happens I train people on sales and marketing. So I've got that skill set already. It's now, can I turn around and teach myself and hold myself accountable to doing those things to be able to hit that goal? But that's my goal, is I want to be able to be a fully sustainable business working for myself as a professional speaker.
Last question. When you're going from this earth, and there's a chapter in the book, in history books, that's talking about Mike Kinney, what is the most important message you want people to get when they read that chapter?
Oh man, it's like a eulogy, I want people to have felt like it doesn't matter where you come from, and it doesn't matter how you were raised and the environment that you were in, or how much money your parents had, or life's going to deal you some rough cards from time to time. And I want people to be able to go, you know what? Mike made it through some really hard stuff. He did it on his own. He had support. My wife supported, my family supported, my friends. I had the right support system, and I still do. I want them to know that the walks of life stuff doesn't matter. The only person that can get in our way, truly get in our way, is us. And some of that self-doubt. And I want somebody to be inspired enough to go, you know what, if Mike accomplished this thing, whatever this thing is, I can accomplish my thing. And if I've inspired people in some way to go out and chase their dreams, or to achieve a goal they've been putting off for a very long time, I'm whole, man. That's all I want. I would do that for free. Truly, honestly, I would do that for free. There's a lot to that. And I think, we all need to think about our legacy that we're going to leave behind. And what do we want that to be shaped like? Do we want to be someone who was easily forgotten? Maybe that's your thing. You enjoy hiding out, but you don't want to be the person that people are glad is dead, right? I know people like that now. I can't wait till they die.
Right.
Right. Little tongue in cheek joke there, but also I want people to know that life goes on. Mm-hmm. They can continue to find the traits that they're really good at, make those the focus of who they become, and continue to turn up the best parts of them to accomplish their goals.
If your dad, did you ever think about, man, I wonder what my dad would think about what I'm doing today? And if you do, what do you think your dad would tell you about what you're doing today?
It's funny. I celebrated my birthday last week, and I am now I'm the same age he was when he died. I have been dreading turning 44 years old because I feel guilty. I feel guilty. I feel guilty living longer than him, and he was a good man. He was a great man. And I think that, he was a very blue collar guy. He and I used to joke about this when I was in high school. He worked for Hormel Foods, and he was a hourly employee, man. He was blue collar union man. And directly across the street from the plant he worked at was the corporate office. And there were many times where he and I would be going down the interstate, and on the left hand side is the corporate office, and on the right hand side is the plant. And I look at him and say, someday, Dad, I'm going to work over there. I'm going to wear a suit and tie every day. And he never wanted me to work where he worked.
Right.
He wanted me to do something better, as we all do. We want the next generation to do something better than we did. I feel like he would have been proud of what I accomplished in professional wrestling. He loved wrestling, probably more than I did, believe it or not. And I think he would have been ashamed of the man I became there after I left. I think he would have been very ashamed of how I behaved and some of the things I was doing. But frankly, he was an alcoholic as well. Kind of a closet one. I didn't know that until after he passed away, believe it or not. Like, I never had any. My dad was awesome. He was a kind man. I think if he were to sit next to me today and we were to just, I look at the life that I've built. I've got 3 beautiful kids, and the home I live in is far nicer than what I grew up in. And, it's just life kind of upgraded. And I think he would be proud of the fact that I stayed true to that. He was always a family man, and I very much am. And I think he'd be very proud of that. My dad used to go to my football practices and hang out and watch me just at football practice. And, I've coached my boys in youth football for the last 5 years. And so it's a little nod to him through all of that.
Right.
But I want to be involved. And I think he'd be proud of the man that I became. And he would be very excited to know that I have a message that I can go out there and share with people. The bummer of it is that part of that message is how I bounced back after his death, but I know he's looking down on me. I know that I've had some help from him from time to time. And, I know he'd be proud of what I've accomplished.
Mike, thank you so much for taking your time. Look, I truly mean this. If there's ever a time you want to maybe reach an audience that maybe wouldn't normally come out to see you for whatever reason, please let me know. I will turn my cameras on. I will get off the screen, and let you do your thing for as long as you want to do your thing on my YouTube channel. I really will, because I think what you're doing is so important, because there's so many people out there who are so unhappy with their lives and they're stuck. They don't know how to get out. And I'm not saying you have all the answers, but you have a few keys that can help turn some doors that people normally wouldn't know how to open those doors. So thank you so much for coming on. Is there any dates you want to let people know about?
Most of the dates that I'm doing now are privately held dates. They're private events. But I will tell you this: if you work for a company or you're part of an association or a group or anything that could use a speaker to come in, please reach out to me on kennyconfidence.com. I'm not going to say I'm going to do everything for free, but if it's local to me and it's important to my heart, I'm willing to work with you. So if you've got it in the budget for a speaker too, great. I would love to be able to come and share my message with your people. And kennyconfidence.com, reach out to me there. That's the place to make it happen.
Perfect. Again, thank you so very much. You're welcome to come on the podcast to talk about whatever anytime. Guys, please subscribe to the podcast. Don't forget, tonight, about 30 minutes after SmackDown goes off air, yes, we are that damn dedicated that we'll be doing a podcast tonight, usually around 10:30, to talk about Friday Night SmackDown, Road to WrestleMania. Did we love it? Did we hate it? Was it just okay? I don't know. Find out. I'll be myself, WCW veteran and author of Looking Up at the Lights, Robbie Idol, and wrestling historian, the one and only, the Grizzled Vet, will be with me tonight. Until then, you guys have a great rest of your Friday. Mike, again, thank you so very much, my man.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, guys.